is Risha. I'm the curator here at FCHM, and we have another clothing collection reveal for you. I'm actually in our collection space, so that's why it looks a little bit different. But here we have a civil defense coat for you. So we'll get you some close up on these buttons because they're special. So let's go ahead and hop on in and talk about it. Here's this navy blue women's coat in size 9. It is double-breasted with 9 buttons. We'll get you a close-up on those buttons pretty soon. There's a tab on each shoulder that has a smaller button on each side. It was made in Great Britain, and it has the date 1943 with it. It's an all-wool coat, partially lined, and there are 2 front pockets with a flap. There's an open kick pleat at the back. You'll see when we kind of spin it around for you pretty soon. So in World War II, there was the Civil Defense Service in Great Britain. It existed under that name from 1941 to 1945. And in these buttons, you'll see that there's that CD topped by a king's crown. Around 2 million people served in the Civil Defense Service in some capacity or another. It also, the Civil Defense came over to the United States at this time too. It looked a little bit different in the United States than it did in Great Britain, but several things were adopted from there. Women were organized into volunteer home defense units, and they were trained in wrestling and boxing, jiu-jitsu, riflery. Cold War times, a little bit later than the 40s, the Soviet women were in combat roles. And they were learning those kind of different battle styles, combat. And the United States were encouraging women to be in more of the support roles, like nurses and clerical workers. And that was something that they were having women do in the civil defense units. The Federal Civil Defense Administration, formed in 1951, stated that the importance of women in civil defense can scarcely be overstated. So they comprised about 70% or more of civil defense workers at the height of the Cold War. American women served as FCDA wardens, auxiliary police, nurses, home preparedness advisors, and also coordinators of mass feeding drills. They did rescue and emergency management, and they had a lot of various other local, state, regional, and also national organizations that they were a part of. And women played an extensive role in civil defense during the Cold War. The Federal Civil Defense Administration was really trying to fight panic with information, was a big mantra that they had. Millions of Americans took part between the late 1940s and the late 1960s. And again, roughly 70% of these individuals were women. Here we've got a pamphlet that I have from our library here in Freeborn County. This was a handbook for emergencies. You can see at the bottom there, the Office of Civil Defense, Department of Defense. And I have a couple of clippings here for you to see. Look at these different preparedness. They had the flood, hurricanes, tornadoes. You can see the graphics they added into here is really interesting, along with the different things that helped to be prepared for these emergency situations. Now here too we have fallout protection, so atomic hydrogen weapons. They were preparing people at home for this. And then also after that, if something were to happen where you had the radiation, you had the decontamination issue too. So that's all research that is found after looking at this coat. It's a civil defense coat. That's from here in Freeborn County. This one was brought in by a Candace Tenold. It could very well have been used up through the late 1960s as a civil defense personnel.